All right, back live tonight here on In Focus. The National Lotteries Commission board says it has resolved to take action and address misconduct issues allegedly committed by some members whose appointment contracts expired in March 2022. The board admits that the lottery's image has been tarnished as a result of misappropriation of funds by senior officials. For more on this story, we're joined now by ground-up journalist Raymond Joseph, who's also in the process of suing former Chief Operating Officer of the Lotteries Commission, Philemon Ledwaba, for defamation. Raymond, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on this evening. Is the NLC board not putting the horse before the cart here? Should they not wait for the processes? I mean, the cart before. What am I saying? The horse before the cart before the horse. My English is running away from me.
Okay, no problem.
Should not they wait for the SIU process to be, at least the proclamation to be concluded and charges be laid, and then proceed with their disciplinary processes?
So my understanding is the reason that they have taken these steps, I've got very good authority, is they're tired of waiting. This process is drawn, it's dragged on. There are at least 2, maybe 3 dozen cases sitting with the NPA. Cases are being investigated by the SAPs and the Hawks, and it's just going on forever. And the board has taken a decision that they are going to force the issue. And by the way, their target is not executive. Their target is members of the former board of the National Lotteries Commission, several of whom were implicated in misappropriation of tens of millions of rands. Vehicles, a Rolls Royce, farms, luxury houses, 3 in particular, the former chairman of the board, Alfred Neville Tandu, and William Huma, a lawyer who was on the board. A third person, Mujahideen Matsufandila, has died since. Yeah. But again, several million rand misappropriated. And this is based on evidence, by the way, that the SIU has gathered, and the own investigations the NLC has done, and then it's also based on several other investigations that the previous board commissioned, and those investigations found serious issues and suggested they take all kinds of steps, including prosecution. Those were buried and have only come to light since a new board took over and a new administration. So that's the background to what's going on.
So the SIU has been doing these investigations since 2020.
2020.
Yeah, we've been seeing a whole lot of reports, especially in the news, for example, of buildings being attached, vehicles and so on and so forth, and some of the contracts being reversed. But is there any substantial referrals that the SIU has made, at least to the NPA?
Several. So just for context, just so your viewers understand, the SIU does not have powers of prosecution.
Right.
Their role is to get back money misappropriated from the state. So yes, they have referred a whole lot of cases with some serious evidence. They handed it over to the NPA. Now, the NPA says that these cases are not trial ready and they've got to be investigated still. And they have handed them to, we're talking about 25, 30 different matters involving the big fish. And they've handed it to the SAPs and the Hawks to investigate. And that is what is dragging on. So listen, the frustration, Thabo, is all over the place with the NPA. To the extent that the SIU, I interviewed Andy Mutibi, the head of the SIU recently, and he told me that he had made an offer to the NPA to second people who'd already worked on these investigations. So they know the investigation, they've got a relationship with the witness, and they would work with the NPA on these matters to get them trial ready, and whatever needed to be done, they would help, because they put in an awful lot of work, but we're not seeing prosecutions. And it's the old story. I think the MPA is a bit overwhelmed, but certainly the Hawks in particular have sat with matters for a very, very long time, and they're going nowhere.
I think a part of the fear, of course, also from what we are hearing today coming from the Middelburg's Specialized Commercial Crimes Court, is that the NPA would sometimes act on these issues, take them to trial before they are trial ready, while they still need to be conducting further investigations. On the National Lotteries Commission case, for example, the Poynton case is the car that you've just mentioned now. I read here that 6.3 million Rolls-Royce, that the preservation order has been lifted because the vehicle has fallen into the hands of an innocent...
It's my story published today, yeah.
Yeah, third party. Now, if you're going to find instances like that, some of these cases will go to court and find that the NPA might have egg on its face.
Well, yes, you can't win every case, but bear in mind what the SIU does. So a key part of their job is to follow the money. So what they have gone and done is they have dealt with the banks. They've got the correct orders. They have got the bank statements. They've done forensic audits of the bank statements. They've taken statements under oath, affidavits. So the building blocks are there. What now needs to be done by the Hawks and the SAPs is to put it into a docket that is trial ready. But honestly, a lot of the work has been done, and I followed this very closely. And if you have a look at the matters that have become before the tribunal and before the Pretoria Supreme Court, there's a lot of evidence there, and they have followed the money. So bear in mind there was a lot of money laundering going on. The car that we talk about, that Rolls Royce, that money came through various sources. So there was laundering going on. They have tracked that. The SIU have got some very, very clever people. They've done that, and a huge part of the job has been done, and really the time for talking is done. I believe that what has already happened, and I've seen some evidence of myself, is assets are being dissipated, because this is dragging on and on and on and on. And yes, these people, so a lot of the preservation orders are being opposed by the people it's been brought against and the companies. Well, that always happens with preservation orders. It's a tough job, but it's their job.
So we've been,
I mean, it's over. It's October 2020 that they started, and then the last thing I will say to you: currently, the SIU is dealing with 700 different matters. They started off with 70. It's now 700, involving over 2 billion rand.
Sure.
That's the scale, and I believe it's much bigger. Sorry, I interrupted you. I just wanted to throw that in.
No problem. Is the National Lotteries at this point, on the verge of being put under administration, or is this entity still being managed well?
No, there's no danger of that. So what has happened is the entire board has been replaced. There is a new commissioner. There's a whole new executive there. And there is no doubt that the organization is turning the corner. If there's any criticism, and I don't know if it's valid criticism, but they have tightened up procedures so much because of the fraud that was going on there and the corruption, that payouts have slowed down. So going from a situation where... So the major abuse wasn't in all the lottery grants. There was a thing called proactive funding that was introduced or it was introduced in Parliament in 2013. It became law, part of the amendments to the Lotteries Act in 2015, which bypassed a whole lot of the checks and balances and structures that were put in to prevent corruption. And that is where the majority of the money has gone missing. And, you know, when you applied for a lottery grant, there were people on the inside, very high up people, who were massaging it through the system. So if you came into the system from nowhere and you didn't have a friend in the lottery business, the due diligence was tough. But if you went via this other process and it was large infrastructure, proactive funding, the lack of checking is startling. It really is. You know, Jodie Skoltz, the new commissioner, actually said to me in an interview, she said to me, it appears as if people sat around a table and worked out how to be corrupt. And the system, the computer system, many of the systems that were there, or the lack of systems, again, she said, were designed to enable corruption. And I've spoken to other people from there, and that's exactly what was happening. You know, when you think of the amount of money that goes through the lottery and the lack of due diligence that was happening there was unbelievable. It really was. Hijacked NPOs, dormant NPOs were hijacked and used to get lottery funding. Shelf companies, which is Tenderpreneur 101, where you buy an existing company off the shelf. It has no financial history. It hasn't traded, but it's got a tax number.
Yeah.
And it's ready to trade. They were using those too, you know, and the red flags were there if they were looking for them.
Yeah.
They were obvious. They were very obvious.
So Raymond, I mean, according to your knowledge, are there any directors who would have come from that previous board who are currently, for example, operating in other companies? Because the NLC board saying that we are also aware that the law allows that any director, as in this case, although to some extent this may be distinguished from a company in terms of the Companies Act, but who has acted in an egregious or vexatious manner against the principle of the Act to the detriment of the public entity and those it is designed to serve. Such a director may be declared a delinquent director.
Delinquent director. So I couldn't give you chapter and verse, but I do know that the former chairman, Alfred Neville Tandu, who by the way was a former regional director of the ANC in Limpopo, and his elevation to chairman was Jacob Zuma is the person who put him there. He served on several boards. Whether he's still serving on, I'm not sure. I've not heard anything to the contrary. William Hoomer served on several boards. And there are two other directors that served on this board, and there's no evidence that they were corrupt themselves. But they were there when this went down, and no one can say that they didn't know. I've been reporting this story it's coming on 6 years, for Ground Up. And Ground Up stories are available free to all other media under a Creative Commons license. And it was being widely republished. My stories in other papers, you guys were carrying stories. Your competition was carrying stories. Other media were carrying stories as people were bust. No one can stand by and say they didn't know. That's nonsense.
Yeah.
And I guess even though there might not be evidence against these people, there's no question that they did nothing to stop it. They didn't speak out. And I think they are going to have a problem even if there's no proof that they were corrupt.
Yourself, I mean, as I mentioned, involved in a court matter involving the chief operating officer of the lotteries. I mean, would a board at the NLC going after these past directors be using the resources, I suppose, of the commission properly? I mean, being caught up in these back and forth legal battles.
So I asked Barney Patiana earlier today, and he said the point is nothing is happening. And if it's nothing is happening, we go to effectively, I'm putting words in his mouth, but effectively he said we're going to force the issue. So just on the matter of me suing, it's the former Philemon Letwaba. So what happened is I was exposing this stuff, and I lead quite a boring life actually, and they tried to find dirt on me and they couldn't. So what they did is they made up stuff about me and my family and how I had benefited. My family had benefited from lottery money without any proof. And he eventually, on Newzroom Afrika, speaking to Stephen Curtis, repeated this kind of stuff. And my decision was partially, I was sick and tired of the lies and what he had done, but also to force him into court because no one else was taking him to court. You know, and it's time these people answered in court. So that's part of it. The issue was never about money. For me, it wasn't about money. You know, and sometimes you've seen it with Bongani where it ends up in court. Sometimes you've got to turn to court to get stuff out.
Yeah. Raymond, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing that information there with us. Ground Up Journalist.
Good. I hope it was useful. Thank you.
Much appreciated. Thank you.